Every few months, one of my American friends will ask, "Wait, so are you allowed to stay here?" And I get it. The US immigration system makes no sense if you've never gone through it. I've been here legally for over a year, have a work visa, pay taxes, and still, if I switch jobs, move wrong, or fill out one line incorrectly, I could get sent back to Canada. So today, I want to talk about what Americans don't realize about immigration. Legal immigration is an expensive, paperwork filled maze, and the part that Americans don't see is how hard, slow, and fragile the process really is. So, first, let's talk about the path to get there. Immigration takes years of planning to execute. There's no such thing as a general application. You need a sponsor, you need a job offer, or a family tie, which contrasts a lot with how easily Americans can move to some other places. And that speaks to not only the power of the American passport, but the power of having mobility. Americans can pretty easily move abroad for a year. There's things like working holiday, digital nomad visas in a bunch of different countries. Those visas that are pretty easy to get in other countries do not exist in the United States, making the path a lot longer than the average person thinks. For me, personally, I spent about a year and a half planning for my visa, 9 months working on my application, and 3 months leading up to the move. Not to mention the few months after you get here where you have to do things like set up your social security number, set up bank information, get credit cards, all that kind of stuff. It's really a process that has at least 2 years from start to finish. And before I really dive into the three tiers of it, the paths and everything, I want to preface I believe that strict immigration is important. I think people should really only be able to move countries and go into a country if they truly are going to benefit it. I think it's important that people petition, demonstrate their worth, and continue to demonstrate their worth until they are a citizen of a country, because otherwise, what's the point of letting more people into your country? I think we're seeing this worldwide where there's immigration problems, where unskilled immigrants are moving into countries, and it puts a lot of strain on different things. For example, the Canadian housing market. So, just because I'm talking about how hard the path is, doesn't mean I think that it's a bad idea. But let's get into it. So, in order to move to the United States, you have to go through three tiers, basically. Tier one is getting a visa. A visa is temporary permission that allows you to be in a country. Even being here on vacation, you are technically assigned a visa, even if it's automatic for most places. So, being Canadian, when I ever traveled to the States when I was young to do things like go to Disney World, I was still assigned a visa on my passport. It just wasn't something that I had to apply for in advance. But that is classified as a tourist B2 visa. But there are also short term visa passes that allow people to stay in the States for a longer period of time than a tourist. Things like the student visa, F1, work visas, H1Bs, O1s, and L1s, and TN visas specifically for Canadians and Mexicans. And all of those visas are around a specific reason. Things like a job, school, or an event. You do not have the right to stay here, and it has to be renewed on a cadence. So typically, a lot of visas have to be renewed after 2 or 3 years. Some visas have a time limit where you cannot stay beyond that visa, and you have to change to a different visa or go back to your home country and reapply. And when that reason ends, so does your status. As a visa holder, if you are on a visa where you are staying here, where you are a resident alien, you still have to pay taxes. You're paying into social services, you're helping other people who are on unemployment, you're paying into Medicare, but you are not allowed to access any of those services. Specifically, I have to have a social security number so that I can get paid, have bank accounts, etc. But on my social security card, it says I am work authorized only, which means if I try to go get food stamps, for example, they would turn me away because my social security card itself says that I am only here for work, and I only have that number so that I can work in the United States. So that's step one, getting a visa. A lot of people never make it beyond getting a visa. Why? Because it's really expensive. There's a lot to navigate, and typically you're tied to something like an employer. But the next step, if people want to move beyond the visa, is getting a green card, which is permanent residency. This is the first step towards real long-term life in the United States. Once you get a green card, you can live, work, and change jobs freely, but your sponsor is responsible for you. And this is something a lot of Americans don't know. If you are someone who wants to move here on a green card, an American has to sponsor it. So they don't actually have to pay for it, but they just have to declare that for the first 10 years that you are in this country, they will financially support you. And that's because people on green cards still cannot access most services. So you're still not a citizen, but you're basically on unlimited residency mode. And like I said, most green cards come from family sponsorship, employment, or refugee or asylum routes. cards. These cards are not easy to get. And typically, if you're doing it from a work authorization, you have to demonstrate that you are so important to the American economy and that American company that they are willing to let you stay in America forever. It is incredibly hard to prove. It's a very long process and it's incredibly expensive to get it done. No matter which path you go down, there are a lot of lawyer fees involved. And you're most definitely allowed to try and complete all of these forms and all paths by yourself, but it's incredibly confusing. The final step in this three-tier process is citizenship. So after around 5 years as a green card holder, which varies depending on why you're holding the green card, you can apply for what's called naturalization. This is when you are finally allowed to vote, get a US passport, and so on. But you still have to take a citizenship test and pass. On top of that, you still have to reapply and pay more. So there are still steps that you have to do, and those tests aren't the easiest things. Statistically, the average American cannot pass the US citizenship test. So this is something that you have to take a little bit of time for, study for, and you also have to do an English literacy test. So that is the three-tier process to get into America. But like I said, the part that blows a lot of people's minds is that some visas don't even qualify you for permanent residency. So for example, if you come to America on a TN visa, which is a visa that is possible because of NAFTA, which is a free trade agreement between Canada, the United States, and Mexico, and you come here on that visa, there is no path that entitles you to permanent residency. So no matter which way you slice it, on a visa, you have to jump to a riskier category to try and have a green card. And for a lot of people that are on visas, they've been on them for many years before they try and get a green card. The average green card wait time is between 1 to 15 years, depending on the category. And things like the H-1B lottery, which has been under scrutiny lately, which Donald Trump has instituted a $100,000 fee on new H-1B visas, has incredibly low acceptance rates. And now it's pretty hard for anybody to justify an H-1B because of the incredibly high cost of it. Thankfully, for Canadians like myself and Europeans, because of some special agreements, it's easier for us to get visas, but we still face bureaucracy. And like I said, the cost of doing it right is incredible. There's lawyers' fees, filing fees, translations, medical exams. These can easily exceed $10,000. I know I spent over $10,000 trying to get here. Employers also have to pay thousands of dollars to sponsor workers. More often than not, you have to work for a company prior to moving to the United States and work for their arm in the country that you're in before they've decided that you have enough value to the company that they're willing to pay those thousands of dollars to sponsor you. There's also the incredibly high opportunity cost of doing it right. It is really hard to change jobs, you have travel restrictions, and you have to renew your visa. The last thing a lot of Americans don't realize is the human toll of having a visa. Living life on temporary status is really difficult. Even for someone like me, where I'm grateful enough to be in a very stable job, there's constant fear of denial, and there is still limited stability. I also can't do things like buy property easily, can't switch jobs, and there's constant anxiety with what goes on next. Although America provides a lot of upward mobility for people on visas, you are constrained to that single job. You are not allowed to take outside income from anything but the place that petitioned for your US visa. To put the shoe on the other foot, imagine if you, as an American, when you went to get your driver's license renewed every couple of years, you had to go to the DMV, bring all your paperwork, show that you've had a job the whole time, you're working really hard, you're benefiting America, and you have to sit there and explain why you get to stay in the country. It's an incredibly hard process and it's really draining. And I want to reiterate that most people want to do it right. Immigrants don't want to break the laws. It's just incredibly hard and there are a lot of steps in the process. But those that make it through are people who probably truly really do deserve to be here. Thanks for watching.